specifying schema.
Okay.
So let's say if we are reading a CSV file, and then so whenever we read a CSV file, everything will be interpreted as strings. So let's say if we have a number, or basically the idea is, if after reading the file we want to read in a particular format and then get the file. What I mean is, whenever we are creating a table, we will be creating the table using certain data types. Everything won't be varchar. We will have date time, we will have integer and decimal, all of that. Similarly, we could use the same thing here. So okay, now if in order to specify the schema, we need to there are a few things that you should know before getting started. Okay. To specify schema in Databricks, there are certain types in so there is a particular module, PySpark.SQL.types, and from this particular, there's a particular library PySpark, and from there we are importing certain modules. So from PySpark we need to import StructField and StructType. Then let's say if you're using a string, we need to import string type, and if there are integer, and if there are date time, we could import that as well. Then the second thing is,
what is this schema used for exactly? When you say you have to do schema, can you tell me the reason behind it?
Yeah, so like I said, so when we are reading a CSV file, everything will be read as string. Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but if our requirement is that the third column is a number, and if you want that number as an integer, whenever we are reading itself, we could specify the schema and read the file to the data frame. So all of the data types in this data frame will have our required schema. Okay, so now so what is StructField? So StructField is basically to tell database that we are specifying a schema.
Okay.
And StructType is basically to imply that this as in we are providing the details of a particular column. Let's say we are providing the details of an attribute, and there will be three parameters here. The first one will be name of the file, name of the column, and the second one will be type of the column, and the third this argument will be this thing, if the column is nullable or not nullable. Yeah. So here, let's see. Okay, now this is done. So here, if you see, for this particular, after this path, there are multiple files. So all of the files are here, and the thing is, this particular thing is very useful. As in, since all of these are in list, you can access each of these using say you could put this in a for loop, and you should say for I in this particular thing dot path. If you give that, you can access all of each of these paths separately. Each of these path will be given to I, and then you could play around with it. Yeah, and then
So
if you
you
want to
can
print,
basically traverse through the entire file
yeah,
directory, right?
yeah, correct. Okay, list as no attribute. Okay, sorry, my bad. So for I, you can give I dot path here. Yeah, so this is very useful that whenever
So
you're
you can just
coding.
okay, so you can basically get a list of whichever file you're looking for and things like that. Okay.
Correct, correct. Yeah. Let me hide the result. This I use this very often in my whenever I code. I use this one.
Okay.
So let's say I'm gonna create a small data frame to show you this one. It's the schema. Okay. So we're gonna see first we're gonna import our particular required data frame, required struct types and all the data types. This is how we import different modules from different libraries. This will be the library, and we're gonna import our required modules. We could the one way to import is we could do star, that will import everything, but that is not
Okay.
recommended. Only the just import whatever you need. Struct type, struct field, and then we have string type. Then we have integer. And let's say so. If you want to create a sample data frame anytime, this is how you create a sample data frame. Now, to create a sample data frame, spark.read data frame, and then give the particular data here. Okay. Now we'll give df. Then I'll display df and I'll show you how to get the schema also. Types. Okay. Now we have not specified anything. So now df dot print schema. Okay, so this df dot print schema will give us all the list of the schemas. So now here it is string, long, and string. Now we will specify our schema. Schema equal to. First we will tell that it is schema that we are specifying. Then we will tell it specify a particular column. And then the name of the column will be name, and it's a string type. And then is it nullable? Let's just give it as true. And then for the second column,
Also, you'll basically define the schema for every column,
yeah.
and you have to do this for every time you read a data frame.
No, whenever we so if we are reading the data frame and if it is inferring the wrong schema, so what happens here is it goes inside the file and then it infers the schema and gives the same schema. So if you want a different schema than what is inferred here, then you need to follow this process.
Okay.
Yeah. Age, and then age will give us integer. Okay. So slight change. So struct type is to show that we are defining the giving this schema, and struct field is for each field, each column. My mistake. I said the other way around.
Okay.
And then all of this we need to put inside a list, and then give this to struct type. So earlier it was a long here, so it changed to integer here. So whenever we are reading a file, and if you want to give the schema, we could give dot schema, and we could define a long schema for our file, and then and how we did it here, we could give this to a variable. Let's say it need not be always schema; it is x, and then we could give that x here. Then it will rather than inferring schema, it will keep this schema and then load the file to the particular schema.
Can you repeat this X thing again? I got a little lost.
Okay. So this schema, whatever we
Oh,
define
you
the
okay?
schema here,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, we put that to variable, and that variable we could give here. And rather than inferring schema, it will refer the schema from this particular variable and then do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me hide the response. So now we saw how to define schema. Then now, so I've already shown it to you, but I'll show you again. So if you are reading the file from the CSV file, reading the data from the CSV file. So here, if you see, the first column will not be header. In order to make the first column as header, we have dot option, and then we will give header and set that to true. That will basically take the first line as header.
Okay.
Yeah. Then there is something known as schema evolution. So by schema evolution, what it means is, say if we have written a written this data frame and we did not give schema. So whenever this thing happens, it reads the file to this particular data frame, and then we will run the rest of the code. Basically, what schema evolution means is, if there is a change in schema, if there is a the ability of Databricks to handle the change to the structure of the data over time. As in, if there are additional columns added, or if there are additional columns removed, or if there's any data type change of any columns, Databricks can handle that. So basically, the ability is to read one type of schema and give the write it out in a different schema. Read one schema and write a different schema. Write a different schema. Yeah. So basically, what I mean is, over time, if there are columns added or removed, we can still read the data and process the data.
But if the schema changes, how will you manage the schema though? If
So
the
Spark
file.
automatically detects the schema of the input file, and then writes the only the required data to our output file.
Okay.
So let's say if we have df and we took the data from this particular path, and then whenever we are writing the file, let's say okay, I'll show you how to write it. So if we do df.select and then give the required column names, here I'm going to give column names, and then if we do to write, we use the write API, spark dot dataframe dot write dot format, and then give the particular format dot save. So here, if you see, what happened is, we read the file. So even if there are changes here, we read those changes, and then we get the required column and write it to a different file format, or write it to the same file format even. So the basic idea is the Spark has the ability to read from a particular schema and then or particular format, and then write to a different schema and different format. So that is how they handle schema evolution. So even if there are changes that happens to this particular file in the in future, they will be able to handle it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So in tomorrow's session, I will give you more example. Let me also quickly check up if I could get more example. This is one example of how we could handle schema evolution. I'll check for more example in tomorrow's session.